Hi, my name's Jeremy, and this has got to be the best compact sub 250 gram drone out there, and everybody is raving about it. Let me tell you why. Now, first is weight. This drone weighs the same as the Mini 1 and Mini 2. It is still 249 grams, but this new Mini 3 Pro now comes equipped with a front and back obstacle sensors, and wait for it, there's another one down below. How did DJI manage to squeeze so much technology into the Mini 3 Pro and still keep it at 249 grams? It really blows my mind. Now, the significance with 249 grams is that you can fly this Mini 3 Pro with very little to almost no restrictions in almost anywhere on this planet. Because if the Mini 3 Pro were to malfunction and if it were to fall from the skies, most authorities around the world agree that a drone weighing less than 249 grams can't hurt more than having 2 apples dropped on your head. In other words, this is a very safe drone from an aviation viewpoint. Say compared to a larger and bulkier Mavic 3 or even the Air2s. For those, you probably need to get it registered before flying in most countries, which is annoying if you're just traveling and you just want to take some aerial shots. And that 249 grams is probably why the DJI Mini 3 Pro is going to be very popular as a travel drone. Anyone with any skill level can fly this Mini 3 Pro and they can fly it anywhere. Now, because of these obstacle avoidance sensors, the Mini 3 Pro now comes equipped with ActiveTrack, similar to the one found on the Air2s, which makes it a breeze to create Hollywood-style tracking shots like these.
Target acquired.
Now, the Mini 3 Pro can only track from behind and from the side. It can also do spotlight, which trains the camera at the subject while you're free to fly the drone. And then there is also point of interest, where the Mini 3 Pro will fly in a circle around the selected point of interest.
The ActiveTrack on the Mavic 3 is far more superior, which allows it to track from multiple angles, and it is even capable of flying itself without knocking into things. But to get one of those, you could easily pick up 2 DJI Mini 3 Pro with a DJI-RC, and you would still have some change left over. Now, as for the camera specs, we have a 1x1.3 inch sensor with 48 megapixel and an aperture of f1.8. So, what does that all mean? Well, it means we have a bigger camera sensor, bigger than the one on the Mini 2, more megapixel, and a wider aperture. And all these combine to help the Mini 3 Pro capture more light and more detail in its camera, which means better quality images and videos. But is this camera better than the one on the Air2s? Well, the Air2s has a 1-inch sensor and it can shoot up to 5.4K resolution. And if you're just comparing sensor size, the Mini 3 sensor is quite close to being a 1-inch sensor. Plus, the Mini 3 Pro has a new feature called Dual Native ISO, which is a feature that helps boost the sensitivity levels of the individual pixels to increase dynamic range.
And that means the Mini 3 Pro can capture more light despite having the smaller sensor size. And from this low-light video that we took, you'll notice that the Mini 3 Pro's sensor is capable of picking up a bit more information compared to the Air2s. And in my opinion, the overall image is brighter too.
The other exciting feature that DJI has added to this drone is vertical recording. And seeing how a lot of people are uploading tons and tons of vertical videos onto TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels, this means that if you are one of those people sharing on those platforms, you no longer have to lose image quality when you resize your horizontal video. The Mini 3 Pro's gimbal is now capable of twisting the camera 90 degrees to create that vertical recording. And that way, you get to keep the full picture quality at 4K at 60 frames. Now, I do have a little beef with this 90-degree twist. I personally wish that DJI would have made this gimbal turn the camera all the way 180 or even 360 degrees, because that way you know those trippy Inception style shots where the camera rotates 180 degrees to give the audience a sense of an upside down world. Well, that kind of shots would have been a lot easier for us mere mortals to replicate if the DJI Mini 3 had those features. Maybe next time, DJI. Anyways, I digress. This gimbal does have another cool feature not found on previous drones, and that is, it is capable of tilting the camera upwards and letting the camera stay there while you shoot.
Now with my previous drone, the Mavic 2, whenever I aim the camera upwards, you'll notice that the gimbal doesn't hold the camera in position. I thought that this was a defective gimbal, so I even took it into DJI to have a look, only to find out that it wasn't. According to DJI, the gimbal on the Mavic 2 just couldn't reach that angle.
However, with the Mini 3 Pro, and if you love to give your audiences a low-angle perspective, you now can. And you realize you no longer have to crab walk with a gimbal to shoot these kind of low-angle shots. How cool is that? Now, let's talk about the controllers. When you buy the Mini 3 Pro, DJI gives you 3 options. You can get it with the standard controller, the RC-N1 for $760, or if you already have the RC-N1, you can get the Mini 3 Pro with no controllers for $670, or you can get it with this controller, the DJI-RC for $910. This controller comes with a built-in display, kind of like the RC Pro. However, the brightness of this display can only go up to 700 nits, so the screen isn't as bright as the RC Pro. And also, the RC Pro has 2 transmitters and 4 receivers, which makes the RC Pro controller more resistant to signal interference, but the RC Pro controller will cost you $1,200. What? So, the smart tip here is, if you want a controller with a built-in display, just pay that extra $150 and get the Mini 3 Pro with the DJI-RC, because it is overall a much better flying experience, because you no longer have to fumble around with wires, you no longer have to remember to charge your smartphone or to have to awkwardly unlock it with Face ID. It is, without a doubt, a much smoother setup experience, and it won't cost you an arm and a leg. And it just needs to be mentioned that the Mini 3 Pro doesn't suffer from the slow GPS connection like the Mavic 3.
Home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
With the Mini 3 Pro, you're probably up in the air in less than 1 minute.
Please check it on the map.
Now, as for range, the DJI-RC uses OcuSync 3.0 just like the Air2s, and we have tested the DJI-RC against the RC-N1 in a regional area where there are minimal interference, and both these controllers took the Mini 3 as far as 5 kilometers before the Mini 3 requested to return home due to low battery.
Critically low battery. Landing.
That was close, wasn't it?
Look, 5 kilometers is beyond plenty for a tiny little drone like this, and it is way more than what your line of sight will allow. DJI says that they're going to make this controller compatible with the Mavic 3 and Air2s, and when they do, I think a lot of people are going to snap up this controller very quickly. Now moving on, the battery on the Mini 3 Pro will last 34 minutes if you ask DJI, but we've only managed 19 to 20 minutes during our range test with an emergency landing with only 8% battery left. But there is a plus version of the Mini 3's battery, which is 40 grams heavier than the standard battery. DJI claims that the Plus battery will give the Mini 3 Pro up to 47 minutes worth of flight, which I suspect that probably means that it will just do 30 minutes in real life. So for those people that love to shoot hyperlapses, I think you'll enjoy having that extra 10 minutes worth of flight to shoot that perfect sunset. And by the way, check out the dynamic range that's coming out from the Mini 3's camera. It looks really good. Now just be aware that if you intend to make the Mini 3 Pro your travel drone, using the Plus battery does mean that you're 40 grams over the weight restriction.
And as for charging, The Mini 3 Pro charges using any USB-C cable, which means you no longer have to look around for the correct proprietary cable that suits your particular drone, and there is no more humongous charging brick to lug around. Now, the downside is, if you want a charger, you'll have to buy one, because it's no longer included.
And finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about is how quiet this drone is compared to the Mini 2 and Mini 1. It sounds a lot less menacing, probably because of its slightly longer propellers, which will probably draw less attention to yourself when you're flying in public, which is a good thing. Look, I think the Mini 3 Pro is a fantastic drone for beginners and pros. It is a huge technical improvement over the Mini 2. The camera is definitely far superior than the Mini 2 and is probably as good as the Air2s, if not better. And it's finally got the obstacle avoidance sensors, which will be much appreciated by people learning to fly a drone for their very first time. So if you're asking me if the Mini 3 Pro is better than the Air2s, I'm leaning towards yes. Let me tell you why. I was initially worried that the Mini 3 Pro would be more susceptible to being blown away during strong winds because it is such a light drone. But DJI on their website rates that the Air2s and the Mini 3 Pro to have the same wind resistance. So I guess if your priority is affordability and you want to fly with minimal restrictions but still have the same capability as the Air2s, I think the Mini 3 Pro is a very, very easy choice. Plus, you get to buy it with a controller with a built-in display.
And if you do happen to crash the Mini 3, it's also a lot cheaper to repair.
Now, if you already have the Air2s, there is nothing that the Mini 3 Pro offers that isn't already on the Air2s, except that the Mini 3 Pro may be a bit more portable and it has that fancy gimbal that turns 90 degrees and it has that plus battery that will give you even more airtime. However, if image quality is what you're after, you cannot beat the Mavic 3 with its 4/3 sensor and telephoto lens. And boy, do I love using that telephoto lens.
Target acquired.
This is a cool hero shot that we took where the background spins faster than the subject, and you can only shoot this with the telephoto camera on the Mavic 3. However, the Mavic 3 is less portable, heavier, hence more restrictive, and more expensive. And like I've said earlier, for the price of one Mavic 3, you could pick up two Mini 3 Pro with a DJI-RC and still have some change left over. So, thank you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed our review and breakdown of the Mini 3 Pro. And if you have, please don't forget to leave us a thumbs up. If not, the other button works just as well. Let us know what you think of the new Mini 3 Pro in the comment section below. We'll see you in the next one. Bye!